Slides. So tell us a little bit about your journey because it goes back a couple years, and you've been involved in San Quentin for on and off for what, 28 years? Is that right? Wow. Okay. So the name of the organization is. So is that mic on? Let's switch this one. Yeah, switch it.
So our organization is called Man to Man Urban Youth Advocate. It empowers fathers and strengthening families. In our society, when I have this conversation with folks, they don't take it seriously because they don't think it's a problem. Because society does not look as fathers as someone who's important. A lot of times they're an afterthought.
Yeah.
And so what I realized, and I'll talk about more of this, is that this is the root cause of many of the issues that we see in our communities. And I always say, whether if you had a father or if you didn't have a father, you were impacted, negative or positive. It depends on if they were in your life.
So in some cases, communities can see the father as the problem, and so removing them from the family is the solution that they come up with, which kind of makes it a much more difficult situation because now you're missing an element of that dynamic simply by pushing them out. And I think bringing them back into the family conversation and being valued for that role is something that we need to kind of work on a little bit. So tell us a little bit about the vision, the mission. Like, what are some of the things that are important for you? I know we got kind of compressed on time a little bit here, but what are some of the things in terms of your mission statement that you think are the key things?
Well, as you see, it says, and I can't see it from here and I got glasses. But I did this on purpose for the sake of time to try to keep it really minimized. But we do a lot more than this. But strengthening families and fathers, one father at a time.
Yeah.
We empower fathers and families through education, support, community engagement. We focus on reducing adverse childhood experiences, and we strengthen family dynamics. Now, here's the thing, providing resources and programs that provide fatherhood reentry support and the holistic well-being. So to say all that, a lot of the things that we've been doing, as you heard, I work with fathers in San Quentin, but I work with the incarcerated population for since 1995. As you can see, this population, 85% of them grew up in fatherless homes. So it's not unheard of. The reason why we're doing what we do is because the foundation is the father. The father is the one who creates that identity. He's the one that gives you that foundation. He's the one to be that gatekeeper to kind of navigate you through the things of life. If you don't have that father figure, then you fall in the holes of the other things where other people become your father.
Yeah, you start to fend for yourself, whatever values you pick up along the way. So you have a whole story of coming along the way. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that story. I know we had all the talking points in here, so I figured you could just kind of like give us a recap of like, where did you come from? How did this become part of your focus in life, and what drives you to really continue to invest your career and your energy in this?
Well, I grew up with a father in the home. He was present, but emotionally absent. He didn't give me the things that I needed as a father. I grew up in East Oakland. I grew up in East Oakland when East Oakland was the murder capital. Many of the people that I teach in San Quentin are people that I went to school with. And so when we talk about the fatherhood piece, when I was working on my thesis, I was a single father. I fought custody for my children. I received custody. They didn't give it to me. It was a battle. I got my daughter when she was in third grade, my son in the sixth grade. I saw how the traditional court system treated me, even though I had custody of my children. And so that led me to actually write a dissertation on fatherhood, and it's called the Recon Mission, reconciliation through fatherhood training, teaching fathers how to be engaged in their children's life and their ex-partners. So it's teaching them how to also co-parent with whoever that mother is.
And you started off really focused on the kids, trying to capture them and realize that you're catching them a little bit late. You need to get the fathers re-engaged so you did a shift, right? So you spent the first part of your career really going after the younger side, but then you decided, no, we need to kind of head and invest and help educate, right?
Well, you're absolutely right. I thought the youth was the problem. And so I was focusing on trying to find solutions for the youth, but only to find out that the youth was only a byproduct of the issue. The root cause was the fathers. And so when I realized that, it's like I had to start all over again. And it's crazy because when I was writing my thesis, I actually had it finished. All I had to do was come up with a solution, and it was focused on the children. And then I realized everything was pointing to the father. So like all of the issues that we're talking about in San Francisco, you know, if you really follow the path, there's a father missing. What we're talking about: homelessness, poverty, incarceration, high school dropouts, public health issues, public safety issues. All of these are just byproducts. And the youth are acting out, but they're only acting out because that father figure was never there.
So it's just missing that other parent, the supportive role where with two parents, you have a better shot. When you with one, you just get one, right? So you're oftentimes missing that resource that would have been there in a traditional family, or having that other adult looking out for you when the other one's at work. So I know we have a video of up here, so I'm going to work on this. It's always a technical challenge, so bear with me because it's a two-step process. Getting it started and getting it full screen and getting it to stop is always fun. Okay. And the audio works.
71% of all high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. 71% of all pregnant teenagers, 85% of all children with behavior disorders, 90% of all homeless and runaway children come from fatherless homes. 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. 85% of all youth in prison come from fatherless homes. Considering that the vast majority of prisoners come from fatherless homes, and my own father's history, I think prison is the true place to go to uncover the real, gritty truth about what's wrong with the family.
So, one of the things that, as you've seen this video, I just actually shot my second documentary. I'm doing a documentary on fatherhood. And this particular time that I went in, I actually had an opportunity to interview the warden. And I asked him, I said, "Did you grow up without a father?" And he said, "Yes." But he went even further. His father had been in and out of prison. And so he understands how important this is. He actually got over those uh, walls and barriers because he had a coach, and a coach said something to him that changed his life. But he could have been a part of that statistic, not having a father, growing up, in and out of prison. And it's unfortunate. They learn what I'm teaching them while they're in prison. And I have a captive audience. They're not going anywhere, you know. And we laugh about that because when I asked them, I said, "When did you learn this?" And it was like, "I've never learned this before." I was, you gave me something to think about in terms of I was birthed in domestic violence. This is what they say. My culture, this is what I'm used to. I saw my mother being beaten. I saw neighbors being beaten. I've seen pimping and all of this thing. This is what I've been exposed to. So I responded to what I've been exposed to. Now we got to uproot the foundation. We got to lay a new foundation and teach them about what it really means to be a man. What is masculinity? What is toxic masculinity? It's okay to cry. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to have empathy. You need to learn how to communicate. Domestic violence is more than just physical.
So a missing father in the family is one of those ACE issues. Can you tell us a little bit, what is an ACE issue? Can we kind of focus on that? And the rest of these are all ACE issues as well, in terms of how you build up a score to identify potential individuals who are focused. I mean, if you look at the stats, they probably will fall into incarceration issues, justice involved. They're probably going to be homeless. They're probably going to be drawn into other challenging issues. But what are these ACE issues that kind of set kids down the wrong path, or kind of scar them before they even get started?
There's a test for ACEs, and I was hoping that you at least kept that one in so they could see what that meant. This is all new. That you guys are seeing this when I'm seeing it, this section. But I know for the sake of time. But when I look at this ACEs, there's a test to show you where you score. If you score 4 more, then it takes you to another cycle in terms of where you are and where you fit in terms of our society. I actually scored 8, which was extremely high, which means that, I could have substance abuse issues, drug, addiction. I could have stressful issues, mental health issues. And so, when we talk about this, and it says, while father's absence causes 90% of our social ills, we still have to deal with the symptoms. These are the symptoms. One of them is reentry, recidivism. Now, mind you, Man and Man has a 0% recidivism. I need to be clear about that. The folks that we work with, they do not go back to prison. Thank you. And so it says formerly incarcerated men struggle with reintegration due to employment barriers. We're going to talk about that with the next person that's come that I'm going to interview in terms of, the employment piece, child support debt, lack of community support. So, I mean, it's like some of these guys that when they went in, they were still paying at the, on the phone, on the pay phone. So when you talk about a cell phone, a computer, a laptop. I mean, they have to actually relearn how to adapt back into society. Substance use and mental health. Many of the men we serve face addictions, which is how they begin to get into the domestic violence. Or, they may have a lot of risk taking, have a bunch of kids, but don't take care of them. So that's really, to be honest with you, that's them medicating themselves because of the childhood traumas. Economic insecurity. Low-income fathers often lack financial literacy and employment opportunities, affecting their ability to support their children. So it's not like these men don't want to take care of their children, but think about when you come out and every application you have says that you're a felon. When you go live somewhere, they won't let you live there because you're a felon. You can't even vote, so they are still living with their past mistakes, not understanding that, okay, I paid my debt to society, but I'm still a criminal. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I think we have a whole Dow focused on workforce development where we see a whole class of individuals that really want to aspire, but they just don't have the skills and the training. So I know Eric's in here as well. He's working on making sure that folks that have ACE or life impacts have a way to kind of jump ahead. We're doing AI trainings and some of the other stuff to give people a chance to get into some of those more economic, stable jobs that can afford a living. So you're not working 2 and 3 jobs. But yeah, the economic instability is crazy challenging. Do you want to address the systemic racism?
And that's a big one. And it's going to get worse in the next 4 years. I don't need to go into that. But the structural inequities in the child support system, the criminal justice system, the economic policies, the disproportionately impact of fathers of color. But it's not just fathers of color, but fathers of color are impacted the most. But when we think about this, even in prison, I mean, the racism in terms of the black, the white, the gangs, the members, the cliques, all of that, even in the military. I worked for the commanding general of FMF Land, which is, I'm a Marine. I worked for, there was a 2-star general, and his staff was a black deputy and a black secretary. Then they had a three-star general right down the hallway, white secretary, white deputy. So I mean, it's not just uh, in the streets or in the prisons, it's in our society. And it's a problem because impacted by me in terms of you all don't know me, but I am perceived to be something different outside with people that don't know me, especially when I deal with law enforcement. You know, I have to deal with my son differently than other races. You know, when my son was 16 years old, he was 6'5". So I had to actually teach him how to come home. You know, what to do when the police pull you over. What do you say? I need to call my dad to let him know I'm coming home. You know, and, you know, get this out your bag. Well, can you get it out my bag? Because I don't need to make any sharp moves because I don't need to get shot. I mean, now that might seem like to the extreme, but that's the life that we live because of the society that we live in terms of racism.
Yeah, just amazing, impactful things here. So the challenges, and this is the manifest in here. So I don't know if you want to speak to this slide.
Sure. So when we talk about father's absence, the data correlation of ACEs, incarceration, poverty, and health, there's a huge amount of data out there. And the problem that bothers me is the fact that we see this data and it acts like it doesn't exist. I mean, when we can go all the way back to Frederick Douglass, and he made a statement that it's easier to raise strong children than repair broken men. He said that way back then, and we're still dealing with it now. You know, when it says father absence has profound impact on children, contributing to higher adverse child experiences, which is ACEs, and increasing risk of incarceration, poverty, poor health, mental health. I mean, you know, you hear this thing now, everybody's saying, you know, I got mental health issues. So they're dealing with mental health. Everybody in this room got mental health issues. As long as you have health, you're dealing with some type of mental health issue. Now, some are more severe than others, but depending on where you come from, these challenges do manifest. Research shows that children growing up without a father are more likely to experience multiple disadvantages that affect that long-term well-being. And so it's like you're going to have to start working all over again. When you see these men that are in prison, they're supposed to be these real bad victims. But let's be clear, these men that grew up in prison, many of them been in the system at a very young age, made a bad decision at a young age that cost them the rest of their lives. And now they're trying to navigate back to society, which means, again, these are the challenges that manifest.
No, for sure. It's a huge problem. And so once you get into the system, how do you work your lifestyle back out in a way where people can find their way and accept and work with you to get back into that space? So this is those areas where we were talking about the ACEs. These are some of the challenges, kind of some deeper insights here. Anything you want to kind of address when it comes to the ACE challenges?
Well, what I was talking about earlier about that data, children with high ACE scores, 4 or more, are 7 times more likely to develop alcohol dependency and 12 times more likely to attempt suicide. Now, they said 4 or more. Remind you, I said I scored 8. And I think I'm pretty educated. I got a doctor's degree. I'm, you know, I'm a minister. I've tried to change my life, and I took this test, and I still scored an 8.
So you can't nullify your childhood, right? So it just comes with you. I see my childhood friends too, and they're like, wow, never thought you'd make it there.
Yeah.
So it's always fun to surprise people. So in spite of the ACEs, it doesn't mean you have to be limited, but just means that, hey, the first part of your race has hurdles. Once we get through that, you can run like anybody else. So you're doing a great job. So talk about the data in here. There's some additional things that are pretty shocking, I think, when you bring this stuff up.
So it says here, incarcerated father's absence. Children who grow up without a father are at a significantly higher risk of engaging in criminal activity and entering the justice system. You know, and actually, Paul had me write an article about this a couple of years ago about prison versus rehabilitation. You know, punishment versus rehabilitation. A lot of these guys go to prison to be punished, but they don't learn anything. So they learn how to become a better criminal. because they're in the prison system and they're talking and they're trying to think about the big payday when they come out, what they're going to do, but not really actually change their lives. And so here, it goes back to that root cause. It says 85% of youth in prison come from fatherless homes. Fatherless boys are 20 times more likely to be incarcerated than those raised in two-parent households. And then it says 70% of juveniles in state-operated institutions grow up without a father. So if we could fix the fatherhood piece, we could fix 90% of our social ills. Now here's the thing, and here's the thing that I'm going to push towards you all, because people come to me all the time and say, I like what you're doing. You're doing great work. Keep up the good work. But you're a part of the solution. You look at me as if this is what I'm supposed to do, but you also living in the society in which we live. So you play a part to that contribution. Because you look at Man to Man, you say, well, it's a nonprofit. This is what they're supposed to do. Nonprofit is not free. We still got paid. We still have bills. We still have lights. We have to hire staff. So we need support.
Yeah,
It
it's
gets
funny.
quiet, doesn't it?
Yeah, you do. So, but we live in this society where, if there's some really hard work and it eats up a lot of time and money, we like to outsource things. And then we can just like forget that we ever do that. So we just outsource it to professionals and we think we washed our hands and we're done.
Right.
And I think, it maybe in the first getting started for pilots, that's a great way to learn how to do it better, but it always comes back to us. It's not outsourced. We have models and we need to jump in with both hands. And I think that mentality that we outsource our problems to professionals is really the root for how problems escalate in our cities and become big problems. And then we complain about the problems and we want to hire more outsourced professionals to take care of them instead of getting involved ourselves. So you're right. We need to jump in and be part of the working solution as it scales out across the community itself. So talk to us a little bit more. There's more data in here about the economic poverty. I mean, these are things that you just never get out of once you get into these cycles, right?
A lot of times we think about fatherlessness and we never think about poverty. What a guy told me the other day, actually, I am going to write a book on this title because when he said it, it shook me. He said that he works with a lot of federal high officials, state secretaries of states for different states. And he was saying that, you know what they say? He said, what they say is that fathers need fixing and mothers need support. And I'm like, okay, that's part of this poverty thing, because the support comes from the father, but the father needs fixing because of his background or his experience or his foundation. And so, if he's been in and out of prison and he hasn't had a job, well, how is he supposed to get a job? Well, he'll get a minimum wage job, but he's gonna need 3 or 4 of those, especially live in the Bay Area. So now, and he has to pay child support.
Yeah, he does.
So the father's absence is one of the strongest predictors of childhood poverty.
Yeah.
Single mother households face significant financial challenges. And this is not to say anything bad about the mother. This is not a men's support group that's just all about men and we badger women. I need to be clear about that because people think about that and they say, well, man to man, and then what about the woman?
Right. This is accountability for men to be part of that family unit, right? To work your way back in, not to stay isolated and step out.
Right.
So yeah, women need support too, right? Because they've got young men in their house and they don't have models, right? They're going to follow the model they didn't have.
Which is true. And kids are great imitators and emulators. They like to emulate what they see and imitate what they see. And so if they see their father using drugs or slapping women or, whatever they see, that's what they act out.
It's normative, right? Yeah. So you did remind me of something. My own childhood memory just came back. In my town, there was a court system just for people who did skateboarding and bicycle things that were not legal, right? So you went to a judge, a court, and you had two choices. We could either put you into the court system or you could write a 5-page paper like why that was bad. You know what? I got to sign the 5-page paper, and it was the most difficult thing I had to do because I had to think of reasons why it was bad. I'd never thought of it before. Put it on paper. Paper was rejected 3 times before it was accepted. But it was amazing. The court system was kind enough to these young kids to say, hey, you're not getting out of this thing, but it held me accountable. And it got me to think about, okay, well, I don't even know why would any of that be bad? This is all great. But it was an interesting experiment for myself, but it kept me out of a formal justice involved process because they could see that there were so many of us that were, we were stupid. Yes. but I do remember that going, oh, great. I have to go, it was like the scourge of the city, right? Here we go. But it's so funny.
Kind of like the young lady was talking about the data for AI in terms of what you put in is what comes out.
Yeah.
And so when we teach these classes, they're actively involved. It's not a monologue, it's a dialogue. We're having a conversation. But they have to be able to converse back to what they're here because that is a deposit. And so what comes out is the withdrawal. You can't go to the bank, put in an ATM machine and request some money that you never put in. And so the change takes place, as you said. They start thinking about this and they talk about it. So now it's a part of who they are. So when they go up before the parole hearing on the board and they begin to talk to them about what they've learned, it's a part of who they are.
Yeah, no, it's very good. Part of this is it's amazing how much of our own journey, if you go backwards, you can see that so many people were investing in us to get us to where we are. For many of us, where we are, and many people didn't get invested in enough.
Yeah.
And that's just it's a heartbreaking to think about the fact that if you get enough of the right kinds of adults in your life, you have a better shot than if you just want to go it alone. And it's really tough in this culture, the TikTok culture, and there's a lot of support out there that isn't your parents or any long-range focus. So talk about this one, about the mental health impacts. We have a mental health DAO that's really starting to address this. When we gather people together and start their road to back, mental health is a huge issue. Over half the folks out on the street have some form of mental health challenge. So it's a big issue. How do you guys address some of the mental health challenges that the dads and the future dads are really facing?
That's a good question. Well, first, health and mental health impacts. It says father absence contributes to both physical and mental health challenges, increasing stress, anxiety, chronic illness in children. Now think about this. A kid grows up in a home that's divided. The mother's fighting, the father's fighting. The kid doesn't know why they're fighting, so they blame themselves because they fight. So what happens is they get to a place where now they're dealing with anxiety. They're dealing with depression. They're dealing with isolation. And on top of all that, they have the streets that's pulling on them. So it's like, man, I can make you feel good. Go ahead and take this. Take that. Come on with me. Have a drink. It'll make you feel better. And then the father part is, and I keep saying the father piece, because the father part is he should be that one who's the gatekeeper. He should be that one who's actually leading and guiding and supporting them and providing for them, not just financially, but mentally. But he can't do that because he's got a problem mentally. He's struggling with that. And so he can't give something he doesn't have. It's just kind of like, coming out of the war and you've been fighting and now you still dealing with the post-traumatic stress disorder. So you can't really give to your children and your family because you're just trying to survive. That's how it is in this right here.
Right. So there's a gap in the kids' lives and there's a pool that other people will fill that gap, right? So dad or a father figure can't play that role. Kid doesn't have that support and dad can't play that support. So he's going to model it and he's going to be pulled into places where he does have that support or have some roles that he can aspire to and be successful with. So talk a little bit about success in here. You've been kind of working at some stuff and we're seeing a word up here, Cal AIM. What does that represent for you and kind of how does that play into man-to-man success that you're having in the region? Talk a little bit about like what regions do you serve in this area and what are some of the successes and what are the programs that are helping you?
So with this Cal Ames, I don't know if you all know about it, but it's something for the justice involved. It's really actually for the homeless people and helping a lot of the society in terms of communities that do work. It's the homeless, it's the mental health, it's the reincarcerated population. But this year, they've really been focusing on the justice involved. And so it gives us an opportunity, which is a real rigorous application. I mean, you give your life away. You sign everything for this, and then you have to keep going through the process. But they're vetting you. You know, all of our board members had to give up their social security numbers and their driver's license, you know. And so, but what this did was it gave us an opportunity to take on the services that social services does. Social service doesn't have the bandwidth and never did to deal with these type of issues. So what they said was, we're going to allow an organization like Man to Man, who has the learned experience. They have been working with this population, and so we're going to pay them as they are a doctor's office. And so when people come to our office and we sign them up, they pay us to enroll those people. Now, they don't pay us like doctors, trust me. But what it does do is it allows us to go into these different counties. So now we're in San Francisco County, we're in Contra Costa County, we're in Marin County, Sonoma, Solano, Sacramento, Napa, Mendocino, and Lake counties. So now that opens up the door for us to bring these services and begin to serve that population.
So, which is amazing, because in the past, big organizations that got started 20, 30 years ago would write incredible grants, take all the money, and then decide they couldn't really serve that population, right? That it was too expensive or it was too difficult, they didn't have the skill sets. But now they're paying you on a per patient basis, and they reimburse you for that time. And you can actually go and train people that maybe didn't have the skills, but you can give them those skills. They can find bandwidth. So maybe this is how the community starts to participate in the recovery of some of its community members that have been on the edge. So it's not only great for you, but it's great for you to go and find people with real skills and good hearts to get those talents and to participate in the recovery of and the reentry process as well, right?
Right. There's a grant that helps us really get that infrastructure. It's called a Sighted Path Grant. So if you're certified, if you have been credentialed for ECM, then you can qualify for this Sighted Path Grant. Now, the Sighted Path Grant allows you to build your staff. You can subcontract with different providers. So we can bring on a licensed psychologist, a licensed social worker, and they can be full-time with us. They will allow us to open up a building in San Francisco and pay the lease and pay the lights and the water and everything else that we may need. So it's a capacity building, but what I love about it is there's no cap. As long as you can justify that you're going to provide these services, then they will pay you.
Yeah, but there's a catch, right?
The catch is it's several months before you get paid.
And how long does it last? Is it just to get you started?
And that's a good point. And for me, myself, I just found out about it this year. This is the fourth round, the last round. So
You're trying to play catch up.
I'm trying to play catch up. But what I look at this for me is to pay for all the infrastructure to get. I can get here in San Francisco, provide the services, show them what I can do, and then I have a track record so that I can now go after other funding because of what they've provided for us.
And you've got a community like this that could form a DAO and jump in and help as well to help you grow.
Absolutely.
So it's not just going after government funds, it's getting established and understanding how to measure success and what that might look like.
Right.
So part of this, go ahead.
Well, you got to go back to the other one
I'm
because there's a thing called CalDAS Network. And so I did a speech in Sacramento for like 36 different counties of directors of the Department of Child Support Services. And I told them my story. And it was super quiet because they didn't like it because it was the truth. But this is what came out of it. CalDAS Network, they approached me and said, hey, we want to build a program for you and do a pilot program. And we want to give you our network. And we'll build this so you can have caseworkers and you can do this, you can do that. And all you have to do is put the names in because we recognize that this is a problem, but we don't have the solution. So at least you got to give it to the Department of Child Support Service because they are trying. They say, hey, we know there's a problem here, but we don't have a solution. But we're coming to somebody who's working with fathers, and hopefully we can come up with a solution.
So it's an iterative learning process together. At least they got the right group together. Now, if we can find the right solution that can scale for the rest of the state, that would be amazing.
Only for Alameda County and Sacramento is what we're doing. They only gave us 2 counties.
But that's good. Got to start small.
Good. Yeah.
Don't want to start too big, right? That's what we
right.
learned with DAOs. Start small. Stay focused.
That's right.
All right, so let's jump into this part. So tell us about this quote here.
So it says, with support and education, every father can be a great father. And then you have this guy named Deontay Hicks. There's a story here. So Deontay, I worked with his dad in San Quentin, but I did not know who I didn't know who Deontay was. And so one Saturday, a person called me and said, hey, this guy had custody of his children. The Child Protective Services came into his house, took his kids from him, even though he had paperwork to show that he had custody. But the custody was in the state of Washington. And I said, I was on my way to a birthday party. I'll never forget. And I was like, I got to call this guy because I know how it feels if you have children and they're taken from you and you have no control. And so I called him. I said, hey, look, man, I want you to know that you're going to get your children. We're going to work with you. We're going to get you the paperwork. We're going to file it. We're going to make sure that you get your children. So I just want you to be at ease that everything's going to be okay. A month later, after we did the paperwork and everything, and our paralegal did all the filings, he got his kids.
Wow, that's cool.
Now, there was a woman that I grew up with who recommended him, and I didn't know any of the relationship in terms of his father. And she says, you might even know his father. I said, well, who's his father? And she told me, and he was with us at the
Innovate.
the Golden State Warriors.
The Warriors workout.
The spirit, yeah. The Golden State Warriors did a thing for Man to Man. It was Hennessy, the spirit of fatherhood. They said that the Man to Man is the face for fathers and families. And this guy's dad was there. And all of his siblings have been to jail and prison.
Yeah, that's been.
And he's getting ready. And this, so he came back after this and said, I just found out I have another son. 6 months old.
Wow.
Can you help me get custody? So now we're working on getting custody of that son as well.
Keep him out of the foster care program, give him a stable place to grow, kind of rebuild the biological family as best we can. So you've got some reentry challenges here too, right? So you were already pointing out some of the economic challenges, the housing challenges about having prison records and voting rights just denied coming back in. It just keeps people out of the system and it makes it really difficult for success to come in. Let me just go through a couple of these slides so we can cut through some of these and get you to the next interview part. So these are all things that you get that just kind of like set you back as a single dad coming out of prison. They can be really difficult things to overcome. The slide deck and the video, we'll make that available to people who want to go through this. So this is amazing to kind of go through. But for time purposes, we have a project. We're trying to start a women's recovery center. And we're always interested in learning from our speakers. What are some of the things that we should be thinking about or doing or taking action with? Maybe you could address our Tree Ring Village community here, the folks that are out here. What would you do? What are some of the things you would suggest, right?
So when you asked me this question, I was thinking that first I needed to, what is the Tree Ring Village Project? So I actually had to late night text them and ask them about that. But these are some things that came up with, community impact days, organized citywide volunteer days where CBOs, community-based organizations, churches, and business can unite for neighborhood cleanups, food drives, or mentorship programs. We at Love San Francisco launch a friendly competition. The reason I say friendly is because we are competitive, very competitive. And we can fight, and then it's not friendly anymore. It's quiet in here. So anyway, launch a friendly competition where organizations track community service hours with winners receiving recognition and grants for their initiatives. So I think this would be a great thing.
Absolutely.
Because as you said something, I started smiling. You didn't know why I said it when you talked about these organizations getting this money and they're not really doing the work, but they have great grant writers. But then what they do is they come to me to do the work. And so I actually had to talk to Barbara Lee, and she said, well, I'm in DC and I'm getting all this money and I'm bringing it to Oakland. I said, but I need my own bag. I need my own money because I'm doing the work. And so I got to go after these people to do what they don't know how to do, but they get the money to do it.
it's never going to scale because they're just outsourcing to you. And what you need to do is build that DNA into every organization or be big enough to really take on that responsibility. So that is huge. And part of kind of having competition is kind of creating an urgency where we all work together to do some new things, right? And try new ideas to get different outcomes. So you have some suggestions for us and some activities coming up here. You want to tell me about those?
So we have a gala coming up. It's right here in San Francisco in Treasure Island. Oh, can we go back to
Oh,
that?
sorry. I thought you wanted to skip that.
So at Man to Man, we believe in the future where families are supported. You heard that. Fathers are active, engaged, and children thrive in healthy and stable environments. But what this part is for you all on March 29th is fostering father love leadership. Gala at Treasure Island. Now, what the good thing about this is that we have Bonte Hill is going to be our MC from the Warriors, and then we also have Franco Finn, who is the announcer for the Warriors, is going to be our auctioneer, who's going to help us raise the money. So these are local people in your communities that you can participate. Amen.
Yeah.
So you can buy a ticket to R10. Celebrate with us and support our mission.
There we go. So stop outsourcing and start participating, right?
Absolutely.
There we go. So this is more information about the same event, right? So if you want a QR code, we got it here. You can come up and talk to Stewart. We'll make sure you get that out there. Any questions? I think we might save questions at the very end, but do you want to
Wait. They say go to running back.
Uh-oh, sorry. QR code time.
Thank you. Run it back.
That slide is twice. It comes at the end again. So it pops up one more time. So I was going to go forward to it, but we're already here. Okay. All right. So we're going to save questions at the end. You're going to bring up a guest who partners with you and that you work with and you're very familiar with it. So let me introduce you. Well, I'll let you do the introductions. There we go.
Should I move?
No, well, you can stay right there. There's a mic.
Okay.
And you want to kind of tell you how you ran into David Jackson.
So I was actually at a Warriors event. There's a friend of mine that I grew up with, and he didn't grow up without a father, but he always says that I was his father. But he's only a couple of years younger than me. And so we were at one of these events in the Warriors where they have all the food and everything. It's really the VIP section. And he was like, you got to meet this guy, man. He says, you guys have a lot in common, a lot of things that you all do together, and you just need to know him. And so I met him, and we've been talking, and I like what he does. And so his name is David Jackson. So David Jackson, he wears a lot of hats. Yeah, can't you tell? And so he is a pastor. He is an entrepreneur. He is the chaplain of the Golden State Warriors. And he has something that our community needs, and that is he has the experience of entrepreneurship, but they need to learn how to be entrepreneurs. You come out of prison, it's difficult to navigate. A lot of these guys already have the skill set to be entrepreneurs. They're just selling the wrong product. And so where he comes in is he's able to help them to navigate and utilize the skill set that they already have, but actually do it legally. So, David, I want to ask you a few things. Go ahead, let it down, man.
It's hard. I'm used to carrying it, so I'm gonna hold on to it for a while.
Okay. So tell us, how did you get started?
I'm a serial entrepreneur, as one would say. I've done a host of things from owned a chain of bookstores. I had a pretty successful car wash, brick and mortar that turned into brick and mortar plus mobile detail. We sold that business. I started at 9 years old with a lemonade stand. And I'm like, hey, well, actually, I committed my first crime and started my first business all in the same day because I stole the lemons. Um, but growing up in Oakland, you got to do what you have to do. And so I remember that particular summer where I borrowed my grandparents' card table. I went outside and I made what I thought was the best lemonade this side of heaven. And I had all these cups. I had just tons of lemonade. And at the end of the day, my grandmother said, "Oh my God, you came back with nothing. Like the lemonade was amazing." I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, how much did you make?" And I said, "Nothing. I gave it all away." And it was at that moment I realized, oh, wait, I might have something here. So all my buddies, I had them to steal lemons and borrow their grandparents' card tables, and we dispatched lemonade stands all over North Oakland. And that summer, I made, as a net profit, $9,000.
Hey.
And so from there, I figured I might have a secret sauce at something. And so it just kind of developed into a thing.
So talk to us just real briefly about your transition from growing up in Oakland to becoming who you are today.
Yeah, I think who I am today is ever evolving, right? Um, I I have this passion for three P's. It's purpose, passion, and profession. Those are the three pillars of my life, and it's an ultimate goal to get paid to do what I love to do. And so, whether it's through my faith portal, whether it's through entrepreneurship, whether it's through people, the dream has always been to make a living or monetize who I am and what I've been purposed to do. And so, I believe that I'm on track to live in that dream.
So, what is the common thread across your roles in business, ministry, and mentorship? What is the anchor that keeps you grounded and connected to your purpose?
I think it would be people. Whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's faith-based, whether it's whatever it is, my common thread is people. I love people in any arena, and I believe that all people belong inside of the circle of human concern. I call that belonging, right? You move from all of these buzz letters and words, diversity, equity, inclusion, this, that, and the other. It's at the end of the day, how can we coexist in the same circle, whether you're incarcerated, whether you've never been to jail or stole a lemon? Wherever you find yourself in life, how can we all coexist inside of this circle of human concern to where I may not agree with your politics, I may not agree with your faith, I may not agree with your preference in sexuality, but there's a common thread and we're actually more similar than we are different. And how can we coexist inside of that circle, whether you're a nerd or whether you're a thug? Like we all deserve to have some type of coexistence inside of that circle. So people is that's my secret sauce.
What I like about the fact that what you're doing and how that relates to the community where we serve is that you have something that they need. And a lot of times in our communities, when we have something that other people need, we don't share it. We hold on to it and we benefit and we profit. And so I want to know, I know this is your first time with us, but kind of tell the people how you take what you have and you share it in the communities and work with other communities.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I reverse engineer it. So it's less about what I have that someone else needs, but we need each other. So I may have something that you need, but if I have that posture, then I'm not positioning myself to learn from you. So you have just as much for me to learn as I have to give for you to learn. And so how do we exist in that space and have that posture together? And so once the light bulb came on for me, and that's why I'm carrying all this stuff. I'm sure you're kind of like, when is he going to get to that? That's a part of the coexistence with our fellow humans, is that Whether you've been to prison, whether you are imprisoned in your mind, we're all carrying something. Like all of us came in here and we look at one another as if we have it all together. But the reality is, you may have come in not carrying a bag, but you came in carrying some bags. You know, regardless of what your bag is, you're carrying something, whether it's your weight, whether it's the burden and weight that somebody else carry or put on you, or, you know, family stuff, ego, whatever it is, we're all carrying something. And how do we get to a place where we can help to lighten the load for each other?
That's good. That's good. Yeah, that's really good. You know, a lot of times we don't use God or the pastor or our servant. You know, when you're called to a ministry, people need to understand that you didn't choose that. Uh, when I was called, I ran from it for years. But you're a pastor, and I wanted to know, as a pastor and a chaplain for the Warriors, how do you see faith influencing not just business, but also leadership in high performance environments like professional sports?
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it is one's definition of faith and what they subscribe to inside of that definition. For me, my faith is centered and plugged into God, right? For someone else, your faith is plugged into whatever it's plugged into. And so a person will say, "Oh, I don't believe in anything." Well, yeah, because you believe in nothing. But you believe in something, because that's what faith is. It's a strong belief in a thing or it's whatever. And so for me, I take the principles of how I choose to live my life and the line that I choose to walk. And I use that as what guides and leads. It's not how much I talk about God, but it's how I show God in my behavior. How because I could tell you, you know, I'm a Christ follower, but then you cut me off and I give you the bird. Eh, okay, there may be some challenges there. For those of you who don't know what the bird is, I'll show you after we talk. But it's less than about what a person says, but it's how they live out what it is they believe, right? So for me, it's behavior and practice, and less about a name or, you know.
Now, this is the last question I have, and this is a good one because I know growing up in Oakland in general, you know, a lot of times we say that, you know, Oakland's like a hole. If you're not careful, you're going to fall in because of the situations and circumstances that are before you. And so you have to learn how to navigate through those things. And so, how do you navigate the demands of entrepreneurship, ministry, and family life while staying rooted in your faith and personal well being?
Great question, and I'll use the illustration to navigate that question. So I grabbed my bag first. It's this one in my left arm. And then I walked to others and I grabbed their bags, right? And then my guy right there, what's your name? Jordan. I went to Jordan and I'm like, "Can I use your bag?" Jordan said, "Why?" Like, right? And we had this discourse about why I wanted to take his bag, right? That's how many of us function as founders or entrepreneurs. We grabbing our bag, we're grabbing other people's bags, we're taking bags that people are trying to give us. And the truth is, I am only responsible for my bag, my purpose, my lane. And so the way I've learned to balance all of those things that you've mentioned, it's like, what is my lane? And anything that's not associated with that has to take a back seat. I can only handle what I'm purposed to handle. Anything else is beyond my capacity, even if I think I can handle it. I have to be disciplined in being really clear on what's mine and what's not mine. So the illustration is over. Can I get rid of some of these bags that ain't mine? Jordan is like, I want my bag back. Right.
I just got mine.
So is this the time for questions?
Right.
Let's give David a hand of applause. Okay.
Vince? Just put your hands up if you have questions.
I raised my kids in East Oakland. So my question is, have you got a working relationship with the schools and the school district in Oakland, because you're dealing with a lot of fatherless kids? The statistics show what's bad. Has the school district been open to working with you, and have you tried to work with them to enter into the problem that's there right now in Oakland?
That's a great question. And the answer it is no. Not that we don't want to work with them. They're just not free to work with us. One of the things that I have noticed growing up and being born in Oakland is I don't get the support from Oakland. I actually get more support from people here in San Francisco than I do from Oakland. And it's kind of sad because, as you said, you know, I've reached out to the superintendent several times in Oakland, and there are some programs that's there, but, you know, everybody, when they see our classes, they're like, oh, the youth need this. Even when I taught at Cypress Mandela Training Center, which is between 18 to 30, it's like, they need this in high school. They need this in junior high, but they won't let us in.
Hello. Great work, gentlemen. Super proud of the job you're doing. I don't know if my response is much of a question, but I love what you said. I spent quite a lot of time on the importance of fatherhood as well, because all the data supports your analysis. I guess my statement and also question is, it is also important to understand why fathers are significant, and to be very clear in that it's not just fatherlessness being a problem, it's that mother-only homes are not good for society. We know that. And so I think it's important. I think it's important for us to have a conversation of what drives this biologically, right? There's a few psychologists in here, and what drives this socially, right? And so there's the biological reason, and then there's also the social reason. And so I guess, do you spend time with mothers as well, sort of helping them understand why this burden is not good for our society and why we do need to empower fatherhood?
That is a great question. And in terms of right now, we're trying to fix the fathers. And I say, and not that we can't educate the mothers, but there's a lot of programs for mothers and a lot of prisons for men, fathers. And so what I'm trying to do is, if I can get the fathers to get in their rightful place and begin to learn how to communicate to the mothers, because that's a part of the co-parent, to build their trust, not to, you know, that I want these children, or I want to manipulate or dominate you or anything like that. Both kids need a mother and a father. And you're right, a lot of times, based on whoever that mother may be, she may have grew up without a father, so she thinks that it's okay to have a kid grow up in that type of environment. Or she may have been hurt by this particular individual, and now the kid is used as a pawn so that she can get back to him. And so it's layers on that topic that you just asked.
So I know it's 1:30, and we got some questions out here. So we're going to keep going here, but if you need to go back to work, or if you need to excuse yourself, you feel free to go out there. But I'm loving this conversation. Don't want to end it. If you can give us like 5 more minutes, is that okay? All right.
So I do want to just say that we're trying to get some women to work with our organization. So because women work better with women than men. And they can kind of convince them in terms of why it's important to work with the father or to be engaged in that relationship so that it can be a family rather than be divided, it can be united, if that answers your question.
Such
There we go. Na 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 na. Stuart, love what you're doing, and so 3 questions, right? One is kind of give us an idea of how you go through working with the incarcerated and training, retraining in being a father for the next generation. How you hand off to Dave in terms of getting guys involved in work after prison, and talk about maybe the best prospects for work after prison, with construction or other stuff like that. And then third, what do we do to get you started in Lake County? That's
In
where-
Lake County?
yeah, where
Oh, that's a
we're
great
gonna be working with the Hope Center up there. So yeah.
Okay, so the first question is, what is the work day, I guess, working with the incarcerated population? So I go in to San Quentin every Monday. I've been going in since 1995. I've never gotten paid a dime to do it. So from 9:30 to 11:30, we teach man-to-man classes. And all the classes build on top of each other. So the first class is men and emotions, because a lot of the men act out of how they feel, not understanding that emotions is temporary. But they turn that into a permanent situation because of how they felt, they responded. And so we have to deal with that part first. Once we can deal with that part, then we deal with the communication, the conflict. How do you manage conflict? How do you communicate? Talk about self-awareness, talk about empathy, talking about being vulnerable, all the stuff that society says men don't do. These are the things that we have to teach them to do. And then the fatherhood piece is a real major piece, because we're teaching them how to father while behind the wall, which means that they have to be very innovative in terms of how they reach out, not understanding that they're still the father, so you still have an impact even though you're locked up. And so we have to teach them how to talk and how to share and how to be present and how to be active and consistent in their children's life. And then we move into that, what we call emotional intelligence. So now we're showing them how not to just suppress how you feel and act out of aggression, but to actually be loving and caring, and how to be able to work with environments and people, because when you come out, that's what you're going to have to do. So all of the classes, actually, we just finished a book called Healthy Mind, Body, and Spirit. I was writing 5 different books on each one of these topics because we have curriculums for that. And the editor said, why don't you just make it a one workbook, a man books. So now this is a correspondence class that can go to prisons where people don't go to give these trainings, but they can be the student and the teacher, and they can go through this correspondence book with questions, answers, quizzes, and they finish the final, they send it back to us, we send them a certificate. This is helping to prepare them for that. The next question was the employment handoff. So Dave and I, we're still working on that, because I think it's kind of complex. But what I understand, because I've been an entrepreneur all my life, legally and illegally. And I understand that it's going to be very difficult for them to get a job. Everybody can't be an entrepreneur. We get that. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to work together to use the skill set that he has, knowing and recognizing the individuals that we're working with, to bring them in and to have that nice handoff, if that makes sense. And you want to add?
Yeah, I think there's two components to it. There are workers, and there are those who lead workers. Both are great and both are needed. There are also entrepreneurs and those who kind of fit in that worker category, right? And so with that, For those who are what we consider to be traditional workers, we're creating pathways for them to not necessarily have to go into these entry-level jobs, but they have managerial level skill sets. And so a part of that circle that we talked about of human concern is us forming strategic partnerships with corporations that are not only willing to take the risk of employment, but also have the cultural infrastructure that's ready to receive those that are formerly incarcerated, those who are persons of color, those who are, have a lot of life experience. And so a part of that, what Stewart and I are working through is creating, I don't like to use pipeline, but creating this proper funnel that the training can begin behind the walls, can be handed off to our group, and our group has already pre-vetted this contingent of people through incubators and accelerators to push them right into meaningful and sustainable employment or skilled entrepreneurship.
And the last thing is the Lake County. So Lake County is, because of Cal Ames, that is one of our locations. So we're actually trying to work with Hospital Adventist Health and create a pilot program, like moms take Lamont's classes, fathers take fatherhood classes, and that we can kind of start working with this for first-time dads and dads that's, have children or not have children. That would be the one piece. But then also, as you know, the issues that is in Lake County, there's so many issues. So we have to start addressing them one by one. But we can talk more about that, but that is one of the counties that they've given us. And so now we have to start filling out MOUs in terms of working with them. Am I taking too long? Oh.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to figure out, okay. But that is a wonderful thing, because Lake County they don't have any resources. They don't have any jobs. They got a meth problem. They got a fatherhood problem. They got an issue all the way around, and they need help. And so I'm looking forward to working with you all in terms of that as well.
Is it my turn now?
Nikita, last question.
So my better half just walked out of the door, but Kent and I work with substance use in the Tenderloin. And one of the things that you said that just kind of lit me up was that you have a 0% recidivism rate for men that work with you at Man to Man. And I would just love to hear like 5 bullet points. I know that community is such a large part of, recidivism, and forming that community allows people to really feel part of the pack. But what are 5 other things that you think are the most important pieces that really allow someone to make that shift?
That's a good question. So I think was born for this, to really actually get men prepared for that transition back into society. And I use my own lived experience because I know I could have been in prison. And so we have to give them tools to make better decisions. The reason why they went to prison was because they didn't have any tools. And we have to reinforce the tools. So one of them is communication. And the reason why communication is important, because there's no relationship without communication, but also being a great listener, because you can't be a great communicator unless you know how to listen. But that also, exactly, and empathy. So miscommunication, conflict, domestic violence, all of those things are issues that can cause, and that emotional piece is the real major one, because once they respond out of the emotions, we got to get them to start thinking before they act. And that's been a problem. They act and then they think, but it's too late. So now we have to start working on those issues as well.
You guys, thank you so much. I know there's a lot of work in filtering out dads. So some of the questions that were popping up were, how do we work with dads who are not ready to be in a family and are disruptive? They're out there. It's a long journey back in there, but you guys go through a whole filtering process to do that. And I know that people have questions out there that they want to dive deeper into how that works, what that looks like. But I want to say thank you. You wanted to say something,
Yeah, I
David.
just wanted to just do this real quick. I have to And I rock with Stewart, and rock with is urban vernacular for we work together. Okay. But I have to give a shout out to I was raised by my grandmother and my mother. Um, and so I gotta give a shout out to them because I am who I am, even though I didn't have a father in the home, because of what they poured into me. Um, and we all, no matter how we identify, are responsible for the decisions that we make with the choices that we have. Whether father, mother, man, woman, boy, girl, wherever you find non-binary, wherever you find yourself on the spectrum, we have choices and we have decisions that we make, and we're all responsible. We're all responsible to those, and they come with rewards, and they also come with consequences. So I just wanted to say thanks for my ancestors.
Thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it.